Question 1. During the Daily Scrum, a developer mentions that a critical software license required for their work has expired, blocking their progress. What is the most appropriate action for the Scrum Master? A. Take action to help the team remove the impediment, for example by contacting the procurement department to resolve the license issue. B. Tell the developer to find a workaround and continue with other tasks. C. Coach the developer on how to resolve the impediment themselves. D. Add renew software license to the product backlog. Answer. A. Take action to help the team remove the impediment, for example by contacting the procurement department to resolve the license issue. This situation describes a classic impediment that is blocking the developer's progress and is likely outside their immediate control to resolve. A core service of the Scrum Master to the team is removing such impediments. Since acquiring a software license typically involves interacting with other departments like procurement or IT, it falls squarely within the Scrum Master's responsibility to facilitate this resolution to keep the team productive. While coaching the team to be self-managing is important, for external blockages like this, direct action is often the most effective service. A good tip is to remember the Scrum Master serves the team by clearing the path, especially when the roadblock is outside the team's direct influence. Question 2. What is the primary purpose of the sprint goal? A. To provide a detailed list of all product backlog items selected for the sprint. B. To give the developer some flexibility regarding the exact work needed to achieve an objective. C. To be a contractual agreement between the product owner and the developers. D. To ensure that all tasks in the sprint backlog are completed by the end of the sprint. Answer. B. To give the developer some flexibility regarding the exact work needed to achieve an objective. The sprint goal provides a coherent objective for the sprint, giving the developers a why behind their work and a shared commitment. This fosters flexibility and creativity, allowing them to collaborate and determine the how, the exact work needed to best achieve that objective. It is a commitment but not a rigid contract. If the developers discover a better path to meet the goal, they can adapt the plan, the sprint backlog, accordingly. For example, if the goal is to implement a basic shopping cart checkout process, the team can adjust specific tasks as long as they deliver a functional checkout. Think of the sprint goal as the destination, while the sprint backlog is the initial map. The team can find a better route as they travel. Question 3. Who is responsible for creating and maintaining the definition of done, DoD? The product owner, as they are responsible for product value. B. The Scrum Master, as they are responsible for the Scrum process. C. The Scrum Team. D. The organization's Quality Assurance Department. Answer. C. The Scrum Team. The entire Scrum team collaborates to create and uphold the definition of done. This shared understanding ensures that everyone knows what it means for work to be complete, which is crucial for creating a high-quality, potentially releasable increment. While the developers do the work and the product owner is concerned with value, the DoD is a team-wide commitment that requires buy-in from all members to ensure transparency and quality. For instance, the DoD might include code reviewed, unit tests passed, and documentation updated, all of which involve different perspectives within the team. Remember, if it's a team commitment that defines the quality of the team's work, then it's a team responsibility. Question 4. Scrum is founded on empiricism. Which 3 pillars uphold this empirical process? Planning, execution, and delivery. B. Transparency, inspection, and adaptation. C. Courage, focus, and commitment. D. Product backlog, sprint backlog, and increment. Answer. B. Transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Empiricism means making decisions based on what is known, and in Scrum, this is achieved through the 3 pillars of transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Transparency means the process and work are visible to those performing the work and those receiving it. Inspection involves frequently examining Scrum artifacts and progress toward a sprint goal to detect undesirable variances. Adaptation means adjusting the process or the product if an inspection reveals that one or more aspects are outside acceptable limits. The Daily Scrum is a perfect example where the team inspects progress toward the sprint goal and adapts their plan for the next 24 hours. A good way to remember this is that you can't improve what you can't see, transparency, So you look, inspection, and then you change, adaptation. Question 5. Who is responsible for creating the sprint backlog? The product owner. B. The Scrum Master. C. The developers. D. The project manager. Answer: C. The developers. The developers are solely responsible for creating the sprint backlog during the sprint planning event. They do this by selecting product backlog items and then creating a plan for delivering them as a usable increment that achieves the sprint goal. This plan, which is the sprint backlog, includes all the work the developers identify as necessary. While the product owner presents the objective and helps clarify the items, the developers own the how and forecast how much can be done, making the resulting sprint backlog their plan. Think of it this way: the product owner provides the what, the desired features, but the developers, as the experts in building the product, create their own plan to get it done. Question 6. What is the primary purpose of the Sprint Retrospective? A. To demonstrate the work completed during the sprint to stakeholders. B. To plan the work for the next sprint. C. To inspect the sprint and create a plan for improvements to be enacted in the next sprint. D. To allow the Scrum Master to provide performance feedback to individual team members. Answer: C. To inspect the sprint and create a plan for improvements to be enacted in the next sprint. The Sprint Retrospective is a formal opportunity for the Scrum team to inspect itself and create a plan for improvements for the next sprint. The focus is on the team's interactions, processes, tools, and its definition of done, anything that can make the team more effective and enjoyable. It is about the continuous improvement of the team's own way of working, not about the product itself, which is the focus of the sprint review. For instance, the team might identify that their daily scrums are running too long and decide on a new format to try in the next sprint. The key takeaway is that the retrospective looks inward at how the team works, while the review looks outward at what the team built. Question 7. A sprint is underway and the market has shifted dramatically, making the sprint goal obsolete. Who has the authority to cancel the sprint? The developers, because they perform the work. B. The Scrum Master, as the guardian of the Scrum process. C. The stakeholders, because they are the ultimate customers. D. The product owner. Answer: D. The product owner. Only the product owner has the authority to cancel a sprint, although they may do so after consulting with the developers and stakeholders. This is a rare event and only happens when the sprint goal becomes obsolete, meaning that continuing the sprint would be a waste of effort and provide no value. Since the product owner is accountable for maximizing the value of the product resulting from the work of the developers, they are the one person who can make the call that the current sprint goal no longer serves that purpose. For example, if a competitor releases a feature that makes the current sprint's work irrelevant, the product owner might cancel the sprint to pivot immediately. Remember, the person in charge of value, the product owner, is the only one who can declare that a sprint has lost its value. Question 8. What does it mean for the developers to be cross-functional? A. Each developer must possess every skill required to create the product. B. The developers as a unit have all the skills necessary to create a done increment. C. The team is composed of specialists from different departments like QA, UI, and backend. D. Each developer is an expert in at least 2 different technical domains. Answer: B. The developers as a unit have all the skills necessary to create a done increment. Cross-functionality in Scrum means that the group of developers as a whole possesses all the necessary skills to create a valuable, done increment without depending on others outside the team. It does not mean every individual member has all the skills. Rather, the collective capability of the team covers everything from architecture and design to coding, testing, and operations. This collective ownership fosters collaboration and eliminates handoffs and delays. For example, a team might have a member who is strong in database management and another who excels at user interface design, but together they can build a complete feature. A simple way to think about it is that the team is a self-sufficient unit, not a collection of individuals who need outside help to finish their work. Question 9. Which of the following is a primary responsibility of the product owner? Managing the developers' daily tasks and ensuring they are busy. B. Facilitating all Scrum events. C. Ordering the items in the product backlog to best achieve goals and missions. D. Removing impediments that block the developer's progress. Answer: C. Ordering the items in the product backlog to best achieve goals and missions. The product owner is solely accountable for effective product backlog management, which includes developing and explicitly communicating the product goal, creating and communicating product backlog items, and ordering them to maximize the value delivered by the developers. This ordering is a continuous activity that reflects changing priorities, market feedback, and strategic goals. While the product owner collaborates with the team and stakeholders, the final accountability for the content and ordering of the backlog rests with them. For example, after a sprint review, the product owner might reorder the backlog to prioritize a new feature requested by key stakeholders. The core idea to remember is that the product owner owns the what, the direction and priority of the product. Question 10. Who are the key participants in a sprint review? The Scrum Master and the developers only. B. The product owner and key stakeholders only. C. The Scrum Team and key stakeholders. D. The developers and the product owner only. Answer: C. The Scrum Team and key stakeholders. The sprint review is a collaborative event involving the entire Scrum team, product owner, Scrum Master and developers, and key stakeholders invited by the product owner. The purpose is for the Scrum team to present the results of the sprint, the increment, and for stakeholders to provide feedback, which can influence the product backlog and the plan for the next sprint. This direct interaction ensures that product development is aligned with stakeholder needs and market realities. It's an informal working session, not a status report, where everyone inspects the increment and adapts the product backlog together. Think of the sprint review as a show and tell for the product, where the builders, the planner, and the customers all come together to talk about what's next. Question 11. What is the Scrum Master's role during the daily Scrum? A. To lead the meeting and ask each developer for a status update. B. To ensure the daily Scrum takes place and is kept within the 15-minute time box. C. To collect the information discussed and report it to management. D. To help the developers solve the problems they discuss. Answer: B. To ensure the daily Scrum takes place and is kept within the 15-minute time box. The daily Scrum is an event for the developers by the developers to inspect progress toward the sprint goal and adapt their plan for the next 24 hours. The Scrum Master's role is to serve the team by ensuring the event happens, is positive and productive, and stays within the 15-minute time box. The Scrum Master only participates if they are also a developer working on the sprint backlog. Otherwise, their role is to be a true leader who serves, which includes protecting the event's integrity without actively leading or participating in the discussion. For example, if the meeting goes over 15 minutes, the Scrum Master would gently remind the team to wrap up and take longer discussions offline. The key is that the Scrum Master is a process facilitator, not the meeting leader. Question 12. What is the relationship between an increment and the definition of done? A. An increment is done only if the product owner accepts it. B. The definition of done is used to decide if the work on a product backlog item is complete, making the increment usable. C. An increment can be delivered to stakeholders even if it does not meet the definition of done. D. The definition of done is an optional checklist that helps create the increment. Answer: B. The definition of done is used to decide if the work on a product backlog item is complete, making the increment usable. The definition of done (DoD) is the formal description of the state of the increment when it meets the quality measures required for the product. An increment exists and must be in a usable condition the moment a product backlog item meets the DoD. This means the DoD acts as a quality gate. If an item doesn't meet all the criteria in the DoD, it is not considered part of the increment and cannot be released or even considered done. For instance, if the DoD requires code to be peer-reviewed, an unreviewed feature is not done, and thus not part of the usable increment. Remember, done is a non-negotiable quality standard that makes the increment real and reliable. Question 13. The developers on a Scrum team are responsible for which of the following? Creating a plan for the sprint backlog. B. Managing the product backlog. C. Canceling the sprint if the sprint goal becomes obsolete. D. Facilitating the sprint retrospective. Answer. E. Creating a plan for the sprint backlog. The developers are accountable for all activities related to creating a usable increment each sprint, and this includes creating their own plan for how they will do the work. This plan is the sprint backlog, which is crafted during sprint planning by selecting items from the product backlog and forecasting the work needed to meet the sprint goal. This empowers the developers by giving them ownership and autonomy over their work. While the product owner provides the what, and the Scrum Master facilitates the how, the developers are the ones who build the product and create the detailed plan to do so. A good takeaway is that the people doing the work should be the ones planning the work. Question 14. Product backlog refinement is the act of adding detail, estimates, and order to items in the product backlog. Who is responsible for performing this activity? A. The product owner is solely responsible. B. The Scrum Master facilitates this as a formal time-boxed event. C. The developers are solely responsible. D. It is a collaborative activity of the Scrum team. Answer. D. It is a collaborative activity of the Scrum team. Product backlog refinement is an ongoing activity to add details, estimates, and order to product backlog items, and it is a collaborative effort of the entire Scrum team. The product owner remains accountable for the product backlog but works with the developers to clarify items, split them into smaller pieces, and gain insights for sizing. This collaboration ensures that items are well understood and ready for selection in sprint planning, making that event more efficient. It's not a formal Scrum event but an ongoing process that usually consumes no more than 10% of the developer's capacity. Think of it as the team getting a head start on understanding future work to make planning smoother. Question 15. A Scrum team consistently fails to meet its commitments and deliver a done increment. The Scrum Master observes that team members are hesitant to share bad news or admit when they need help. Which Scrum value is most likely lacking? A. Focus. B. Respect. C. Courage. D. Commitment. Answer. C. Courage. The Scrum value of courage is about doing the right thing and working on tough problems, which includes being transparent about challenges, impediments, and failures. When team members are afraid to share bad news, ask for help, or challenge each other constructively, it shows a lack of courage. This fear prevents the team from inspecting reality and adapting, which is crucial for solving problems and ultimately meeting their commitments. For example, a developer needs courage to say, "I'm stuck on this task and need help," rather than hiding the problem until the end of the sprint. Remember, courage in Scrum is not about heroism, but about being open and honest for the good of the team and the product. Question 16. Which statement best describes the product backlog? A complete and exhaustive list of everything the product will ever have. B. A static list of requirements that is defined at the start of the project. C. An emergent ordered list of what is needed to improve the product. D. A list of tasks assigned to the developers by the product owner for the current sprint. Answer. C. An emergent ordered list of what is needed to improve the product. The product backlog is a dynamic and living artifact that is never complete. It is emergent, meaning it evolves as the product, stakeholders, and market evolve. It is an ordered list, not just a plain list with the most valuable and clear items at the top, ready for the next sprint. This emergent nature allows the team to adapt to new information and feedback, ensuring they are always working on the most valuable things. For example, a new competitor's feature might cause the product owner to add new items and reorder the entire backlog to respond to the market change. A helpful way to think of it is that the product backlog is a roadmap that is constantly being updated based on the latest traffic conditions and desired destination. Question 17. What does it mean for a team to be self-managing? The Scrum Master tells the team how to turn product backlog items into an increment. B. The team internally decides who does what, when, and how. C. The team members can choose which projects they want to work on. D. The product owner assigns tasks to individual developers. Answer. B. The team internally decides who does what, when, and how. A self-managing team means the developers decide internally how to best accomplish their work, rather than being directed by others outside the team. This includes choosing which person works on which task, the order of the work within the sprint, and the methods they use to turn product backlog items into a done increment. This autonomy fosters creativity, accountability, and ownership, leading to better outcomes. For instance, during the daily scrum, the developers might decide to pair up on a complex problem or reassign tasks based on who has available capacity, without needing approval. The key is that self-management is about the team controlling the how, while the product owner still sets the what, the goals. Question 18. What is the time box for a daily scrum? 15 minutes regardless of the sprint length. B. 2 minutes per person on the development team. C. 30 minutes for a 1-month sprint and it scales down for shorter sprints. D. As long as it takes for the developers to create their plan for the day. Answer: 15 minutes regardless of the sprint length. The daily scrum has a strict time box of 15 minutes for the developers to inspect progress toward the sprint goal and adapt a plan for the next 24 hours. This fixed duration holds true whether the sprint is 1 week or 1 month long. The consistency and brevity of the time box keep the discussion focused and efficient, preventing it from turning into a long problem-solving or status reporting meeting. If further discussion is needed, team members can arrange to meet immediately after the daily scrum. A good tip is to remember that the 15-minute time box is a key constraint that forces the team to be concise and focused on its goal. Question 19. In what capacity does a Scrum Master work with stakeholders? A. By filtering their requests before they reach the product owner. B. By managing their expectations and reporting on the team's progress. C. By helping remove barriers between stakeholders and Scrum teams. D. By gathering requirements from them to add to the product backlog. Answer: C. By helping remove barriers between stakeholders and Scrum teams. A key part of the Scrum Master's service to the organization is helping stakeholders and the Scrum team understand each other and interact effectively. This often means removing barriers to communication and collaboration, ensuring that stakeholders know how to engage with the team productively, for example, during the sprint review. The Scrum Master coaches stakeholders on the empirical nature of Scrum and helps them understand how to best support self-managing teams. They do not act as a gatekeeper but as a facilitator of productive relationships. Think of the Scrum Master as a bridge builder, connecting the team and its stakeholders to create a smooth flow of value and feedback. Question 20. The developers are halfway through a sprint when the product owner comes with a new urgent request from a major stakeholder. How should this be handled? A. The developers must add the new item to the sprint backlog and drop something of equal size. B. The product owner can add the new item to the sprint backlog, but nothing can be removed. C. The new request can be added to the sprint backlog if the developers agree and the sprint goal is not endangered. D. The sprint should be cancelled to accommodate the new urgent request. Answer: C. The new request can be added to the sprint backlog if the developers agree and the sprint goal is not endangered. During a sprint, no changes should be made that endanger the sprint goal. However, the scope of the sprint backlog may be clarified and renegotiated between the product owner and developers as more is learned. If a new urgent item appears, the product owner can negotiate with the developers to see if it can be pulled into the current sprint. This is only possible if the work on the sprint goal is not impacted and the developers agree they have the capacity, potentially by swapping out other forecasted work. This respects the developer's ownership of the sprint backlog and protects the focus provided by the sprint goal. The key is that the sprint goal is the team's primary commitment. Question 21. For a 1-month sprint, what is the maximum time box duration for the sprint planning event? 2 hours. B. 4 hours. 8 hours. C. As long as needed. Answer: C. 8 hours. Sprint planning is time-boxed to a maximum of 8 hours for a 1-month sprint. For shorter sprints, the event is usually proportionally shorter. For example, a 2-week sprint would typically have a sprint planning event of no more than 4 hours. This time box ensures that the team does not spend excessive time on planning and can move forward into the development work of the sprint. It provides enough time for the Scrum team to collaborate on the sprint goal, select the work to be done, and create an initial plan for getting that work done. Remember this simple rule of thumb from the Scrum Guide. For a 1-month sprint, the time box is 8 hours and it scales down from there. Question 22. At the end of a sprint, several product backlog items that the developers worked on do not meet the definition of done. What happens to this incomplete work? A. It is demonstrated in the sprint review to show the progress made. B. It is automatically carried over into the next sprint's backlog. C. It is not considered part of the increment and is returned to the product backlog. D. It is discarded and the team starts over on those items in a future sprint. Answer. C. It is not considered part of the increment and is returned to the product backlog. Work that does not meet the definition of done cannot be considered part of the increment and should not be presented at the sprint review as done work. This incomplete or undone work is placed back on the product backlog, where the product owner will reorder it based on its current value and priority. The effort already expended might be considered when the developers forecast work for a future sprint, but it is not automatically moved to the next one. This rule reinforces the importance of the definition of done as a quality standard and ensures that the product backlog remains the single source of truth. The takeaway here is, if it's not done, it's not done, and all not done work goes back to the main list to be reconsidered. Question 23. Which of the following is an example of the Scrum Master's service to the wider organization? Ensuring that developers are working at full capacity every day. B. Planning, advising, and leading the organization in its Scrum adoption. C. Creating detailed project plans and reporting status to management. D. Assigning tasks to the members of the Scrum team. Answer. B. Planning, advising, and leading the organization in its Scrum adoption. The Scrum Master serves the organization by leading, training, and coaching it in its Scrum adoption. This involves helping employees and stakeholders understand and enact an empirical approach for complex work and removing barriers between stakeholders and Scrum teams. This service extends beyond the immediate Scrum team and helps foster an environment where Scrum can thrive, which is a far greater responsibility than just focusing on one team. For example, a Scrum Master might run workshops for other departments on Agile principles or help management understand how to best support self-managing teams. The key is to see the Scrum Master as an organizational change agent for agility, not just a team-level facilitator. Question 24. What is the primary reason a product owner might cancel a sprint? A. The developers are not on track to complete all the items in the sprint backlog. B. A key stakeholder is unhappy with the progress. C. The sprint goal has become obsolete. D. The Scrum Master has identified a better way for the team to work. Answer. C. The sprint goal has become obsolete. A sprint can be cancelled only if the sprint goal becomes obsolete, meaning that achieving it no longer provides value or makes sense in the current context. This is a significant decision and is exclusively the product owner's to make. Other issues such as the team not completing all forecasted work or stakeholder dissatisfaction are opportunities for inspection and adaptation within the normal flow of sprints, typically addressed in the sprint review and retrospective. Canceling a sprint is a drastic measure reserved for when the fundamental purpose of the sprint is no longer valid. For example, if a new law is passed that makes the feature being built illegal, the sprint goal is obsolete. Remember, cancellation is about the why of the sprint being invalidated, not about the how or how much. Question 25. A Scrum team is holding its sprint review. The developers have finished their demonstration of the increment. What is a key activity that should happen next in the event? A. The Scrum Master provides feedback on the team's adherence to the Scrum framework. B. The product owner and stakeholders collaborate on what to do next, providing valuable input for the product backlog. C. The developers begin planning the technical tasks for the next sprint. D. The team celebrates the successful completion of the sprint and ends the meeting. Answer. B. The product owner and stakeholders collaborate on what to do next, providing valuable input for the product backlog. The sprint review is more than just a demonstration. It is a crucial working session for inspection and adaptation of the product. After the developers show what was accomplished, a key part of the meeting is the discussion between the product owner, developers, and stakeholders about the state of the product and what makes the most sense to do next. This feedback and collaboration directly inform the product backlog, helping the product owner make adjustments and order the work to maximize value in the upcoming sprints. This ensures the product evolves based on real feedback from the people who will use it or are invested in it. Think of the sprint review as a feedback loop that directly steers the future direction of the product.